So, I recently had to deal with a situation involving my property, a power-hungry HOA, and some wannabe law enforcement officers who thought they could bully me into following rules that didn't even apply to me. At first, it was just annoying letters and empty threats. But when they actually sent fake cops to my door claiming they had the authority to arrest me, that's when I knew things had gone too far. Let me start from the beginning. I knew trouble was brewing the moment I found a letter stuffed in my mailbox, stamped with a fancy HOA logo. Now, that might not sound like a big deal, but here's the thing. I don't belong to an HOA. Never signed anything. Never agreed to any rules. And in the 20 years I've lived on this land, I've never had a problem. So why the hell was I getting a notice from a homeowners association that I had nothing to do with? I opened the letter and read the nonsense inside. Dear homeowner, as part of the HOA community, your property is subject to community standards and regulations. We have noticed the following violations that must be addressed immediately. Unapproved fencing materials. Failure to maintain HOA-approved landscaping. Unauthorized vehicle parking in driveway. Please rectify these issues within 30 days to avoid fines and further action. I laughed out loud. Their rules didn't apply to me. This was my land, not part of their little gated kingdom. So I did what any rational person would do. I crumpled up the letter and tossed it in the trash. Problem solved, right? Wrong. 2 days later, I saw 3 people in dress shirts and clipboards standing at the edge of my driveway, whispering among themselves. I stepped outside, coffee in one hand, shotgun leaning casually against the porch railing, and watched them like a hawk. The moment they saw me, the woman in front, short, blonde, and way too smug-looking, cleared her throat. Good morning, sir. I'm Margaret Whitmore, president of the HOA. We're just here to do a quick property evaluation. I blinked. For what? Margaret smiled like she was talking to a child. Well, now that your property is officially within HOA boundaries, we need to ensure it meets community standards. I raised an eyebrow. Within HOA boundaries? Since when? She beamed. We voted last month to incorporate this section of the neighborhood into the HOA. It's really a great opportunity to... I held up a hand. Let me stop you right there. This isn't up for debate. My land isn't part of your HOA. I never signed anything. Margaret's smile tightened. Well, unfortunately, the board has already decided. I laughed. Lady, you can't just vote to take someone's land. When the clipboard man, a skinny guy who looked like he'd never worked a real job in his life, cleared his throat. Well, technically, the HOA has jurisdiction over all properties within the community boundary. I leaned in, and technically, you're all trespassing on private property. Margaret's face twitched. I don't think you understand how this works, she said, folding her arms. We have the authority to enforce community regulations. I pointed to my mailbox. You see that address? Does it say HOA anywhere? Silence. I pointed to my gate. See that no trespassing sign? That applies to all of you. More silence. Margaret let out a dramatic sigh, like I was being completely unreasonable. Mr. Carter, we want to work with you, she said, forcing a smile. But if you refuse to comply, the HOA will take legal action. I grinned. Good. Can't wait to see how that works out for you. Margaret's eye twitched. She turned to her clipboard crew. Let's go for now. They left, whispering among themselves, throwing glances back at me like I was some kind of dangerous outlaw. I shook my head, took another sip of coffee, and went inside. I figured that was the end of it. I was wrong, because the next morning, I woke up to HOA violation notices taped to my fence. And 3 nights later, my security cameras caught them sneaking onto my land. Instead of backing off, they doubled down. Within a week, I started receiving dozens of violation notices. These weren't just annoying letters anymore. They were ridiculous. According to the HOA, I was now in violation for having the wrong kind of fence, not submitting landscaping plans for my backyard, parking my own damn truck in my own driveway. If you're wondering how the hell an HOA can find someone who isn't even a member, so was I. So I decided to make a few phone calls. I reached out to the county property office, checked my deed, and confirmed what I already knew. My land was never part of their HOA. That should have been the end of the conversation. But when I called Margaret and politely informed her that they had zero authority over my land, she smirked. I could hear it through the phone. "Well," she said, her voice dripping with fake concern, "we've already documented your noncompliance. If you refuse to follow the rules, we'll have no choice but to escalate things legally." I raised an eyebrow. "Legally?" She let out a dramatic sigh. "Mr. Carter, we don't want to be forced to take action, but this is about maintaining community order." I took a slow breath. "Margaret, you can document whatever you want, but you don't have a single legal foot to stand on." Silence. Then a smirk in her voice. "We'll see about that." And she hung up. I'm not one for paranoia, but I know when someone's planning something. So that night, I did what any rational person would do. I installed cameras. Good ones. Motion activated, night vision, full security setup. And guess what? 3 nights later, the cameras caught them. 2:34 a.m. flashlights in hand, measuring my property, marking things down, planning something. That's when I realized Margaret wasn't bluffing. She thought I was just some stubborn homeowner who'd back down. She had no idea what was coming next. Wait for part 2.